I got a new mic! Yay! Hey everybody, and welcome back to our quest for the best season of Total Drama. My name is Silly Billy, but you can call me Billy. This video is part 2 in a series of 7 separate videos in which we analyze each of the 7 main seasons of the show Total Drama and its spin-off The Redonkulous Race in order to determine which is the absolute best. If you haven't seen the first video yet, I highly recommend watching that one first. But if you feel like a rebel and you chose to ignore the warning I gave you like 3 seconds ago, last video we talked about the worst season of the bunch, which is Parkatoo Island. Yeah, I know, big shocker, right? And from one bad season, we jump straight over into another. By now you can probably all guess which one it is, but let's keep the suspension in the air for a bit longer while I shamelessly ask for your validation on the internet. If you're watching this on release, and you know how to count, then you will probably know that this is only my second ever video. So if you like what you've seen so far, please consider sharing that with me too by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. And if you're watching this while I'm already a multimillionaire from all those YouTube sponsorship deals, then please still consider liking and subscribing. You're the best. As a final note, please keep in mind that this and all subsequent videos in this series are purely based on my opinion. Let me know how wrong I am in the comments as much as you like, but let's keep it civil. Also, tell me what place in the ranking you would put this season. Cool? Cool. Oh, and as a final note, massive spoilers for every single season up until this point. Without further ado, let's just jump straight into the second episode with... Number 6! Total Drama All-Stars. No way! Maybe not the worst season of the bunch, but definitely the most disappointing one. Total Drama All-Stars, or Season 5, had the amazing premise of uniting the original Total Drama cast with the new cast we had just met in the season before it. This season was supposed to be the big climax of what we have been building up to this far, taking 14 of the most well-known and beloved contestants from all seasons so far to find out who the definitive Total Drama champion is. But instead, we could probably rename the season to Total Drama Character Derailment! Yeah, it's not good. It's fitting that this video releases on a Monday, because both this season and Mondays give me a horrible stomachache. But to be fair, this season does get a lot of criticism I don't think it deserves. Sure, there are plenty of things not to like about Total Drama All-Stars, but I feel like people give it a harder time than it's justified. Let's talk about characters first. A lot of people when commenting on All-Stars will point out the bizarre selection of characters for this season, and in most cases, justifiably so. For Revenge of the Island, we have everyone who made it to the merge. And Sam? I will get to him later. For the original cast, we've got everyone you think of when you hear the words All-Star. Everybody's here. We got Heather, Duncan, Courtney, Owen, Gwen, the whole gang. Wait a minute. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, wait, where the heck is Owen? Okay, for some reason they omitted Owen from this season. Why? When you think of Total Drama, most people are probably going to first think of Owen. He's the first thing to come to people's minds, and for good reason. Almost everyone likes Owen, and the people who don't often don't because he gets too much screen time. Which is exactly why he should be here! You cannot have an all-star season without including Owen. It would be like making a tomato soup and then forgetting to add tomatoes. Sure, you can have a lot of nice ingredients that culminate in a delicious tasting soup, but it will never be the tomato soup you were going for! Now, I can get where this decision is coming from. Or at least, let me present my theory on how this all went down. They had already decided on wanting an equal number of contestants from each generation. And given that there would be 14 characters, this would mean 7 for each generation. Not only that, but the team always wants an equal representation for male and female characters. For the Revenge of the Island cast, you don't have a lot of people you can already call an all-star. None of these characters had made a second appearance yet, so it would only be logical to add all characters who made it to the merge of that season, with an additional Sam. Again, we'll get to him later. Hi, Editing Billy here. Sorry to interrupt this video, but I really can't take this music serious. I'm sorry. Let me just quickly... there. This should do it. Okay, moving on. Problem is, the Revenge of the Island cast had more prominent male characters than female. So now we already have 5 out of 7 male character slots filled up by Revenge of the Island characters, leaving only 2 spots for the original cast. In that light, and only in that light, can I see why they would ditch Owen. They clearly wanted to have Alejandro and Sierra, who both hadn't gotten their second season either, and not having Duncan in an all-star season would have been just as big of a sin as not including Owen. But then again, who cares? You still leave out Owen of the season he should have most definitely been in. Like I said, the team went for an equal number of original and Revenge of the Island contestants, but why would you? Most of the Total Drama cast has had 3 full seasons to shine and develop themselves, while the Revenge of the Island cast has just that season to establish themselves. Out of the 14 contestants in Total Drama All-Stars, 9 characters have never appeared in a second season up until this point. A 50-50 split between the two casts just doesn't make sense in an All-Star season, and they probably shouldn't have cared about this. And this brings me to Sam. Now, unlike what you might think, I actually don't mind his inclusion that much. Like I said, there are 9 characters in this season who hadn't gotten a second chance yet, and from the little time we have seen Sam in Revenge of the Island, he seems like a nice guy deserving of another shot. If I could choose, I would have probably gone with Brick, but that doesn't mean I think Sam is robbing players of a position in this season. Now, what does annoy me is the fact that the guy we are presented with in All-Stars is not Sam. Sure, he shares a lot of similarities with the Revenge of the Island Sam, but mostly they made him just into a copy of Owen. He is very motivated to do the good thing, but often ends up doing something dumb or saying something weird, and he finds himself in a lot of food-related jokes and situations. Huh, sounds familiar, right? Which begs the question why they wouldn't just replace him with Owen. And it's not like they had this massive underdog story planned for Sam, because he is eliminated around the same time as he is in Revenge of the Island. If you were to replace Sam with Owen, I don't think this season would change one bit. You could even keep the reason for his elimination the same, because Owen would absolutely have kept 2 pieces of pancake for later as well. Also, remember how I mentioned Parkatu Island had this problem of a lot of characters not being viable choices to be in the finale and take the win? Yeah, All-Stars kind of runs into this problem as well, but for a different reason. Owen and Beth are the only 2 characters to have been in the finale before and not be a part of the All-Stars cast, meaning that the other 6 winners are all here. And while there is a slight possibility one of them will make the finale again to secure their place as the Total Drama All-Star, the far more likely alternative is that none of them will get into the finale. This leaves only 8 viable options for the finale spot, and as the episodes progress, it gets more and more obvious who they are going to pick. Okay, enough about the characters that did or didn't make the cut, let's talk about the actual characters that are here. Surely they have some amazing ways to develop these characters and finish up their stories, right? Right? All-Stars really doesn't do its longtime characters justice, and it's painful to watch. It's especially true for the original cast members and to a lesser degree to the Revenge of the Island cast as well. Let me start with the actual All-Stars in this season first, being Lindsay, Duncan, Courtney, Gwen and Heather. Lindsay, after showing she can be a competent character, manages to eliminate herself from the show. Again! Only this time, it isn't because she was so confident in her plan to vote off Courtney that she happened to click on her own picture, but it's because she crosses off her own face! Literally! We know Lindsay isn't this dumb. It's insulting to the viewer and especially to fans of the character.
Okay, how are you pushing her?
The development she got over 3 seasons is completely ignored just to make this one dumb joke. Eliminating Lindsay doesn't matter all that much, it's an all-star cast, some favorites have to bite the dust early. But the way she is eliminated from the show is just degrading to the character. In this stage, she would have probably been better off not appearing in the show at all. And speaking of dumb, it's Heather! For some reason. Okay, Heather has been established as one of, if not the most tactical player in the game. She knows how to manipulate people and how to save herself from tight situations. Not this Heather though. This Heather finds the immunity idol on Boney Island and decides to hide it behind a rock. Why? Old Heather would have never made this mistake. Obviously the idol gets stolen by Alejandro, and when Heather goes to pick the idol back up, the thought doesn't even cross her mind that Al nicked it. Instead, she blames Chris and the production team. Obviously, this leads to her elimination, and it's probably for the better. This is not the Heather I want to remember. Just like with Lindsay, her placing in the season doesn't bother me that much. Now, what does bother me is the way that she is portrayed in her final episode. Up until this point, I even had some good times with the character. I laughed out loud at the fact that Heather is self-aware enough to pretend she is affected by the blue moon and how cuddly she acts to get a little information out of Alejandro. Right here is where I'd like to make a small trip to talk about Heather and how she is the best written character in Total Drama. Not the most enjoyable character, although you could argue she is, I won't judge, but she is the character with the best development. They did such a good job at portraying her story arc over the first 3 seasons of the show. And the funny thing is that her appearance reflects her character based on what she is going through as a person. During season 1, she is this bossy babe, and she's the character we love to hate, right? And she has long hair. But at the end of the first season, that hair and that attitude gets cut short, right? And then for the entirety of the second season, Heather is struggling with baldness. She has a wig with which she is trying to mask that she has changed as a person. She's not trying to let it affect her, and she's trying to remain the same person she was in the first season, but she's hurting. And this is the season of payback for Heather, right? Every single thing she has done in the first season, that's all coming back this season to bite her in the bum. Heather gets to endure the consequences of her actions from the first season, and the other contestants get their chance of payback for what Heather has done to them. And this is the season where Heather is in for the shortest amount of time, not counting All-Star. And then in the third season, Heather gets to return, and her hair has finally grown back a bit, and she, as well as her hair, has grown a bit from that experience. And, well, quickly, she's dealt the last blow by Lashana, who knocks a tooth out of her mouth, and for the rest of the season, we have this new Heather that still bears the scars of what she's been doing in the past, represented by that shorter hair and that golden tooth. But this time, there's opportunity for Heather to grow as a character and to become more than the stereotypes surrounding her. And this is beautiful. This is the best way you could write a character, and it's so good. It's art. Then we get to All-Stars, and her hair has grown fully back, but also the golden tooth is now gone. Any reminder that Heather was once a bad person but had to pay the price for that is now gone. And wouldn't you know it, Heather in All-Stars is basically Heather in Island. There's no character growth here. It's almost as if we reverted back to the original character. And this is such a shame because it's so degrading to the best story arc we have been given throughout the seasons. It's just gone. Next up, it's the goth queen herself, Gwen. Gwen's desperate attempts to become good friends with Courtney feel very forced at times. It's nice seeing them reunite when Courtney finally believes her, but there are definitely moments where this conflict is forced too hard and it only leads to me dying of cringe. Besides that, I think Gwen on herself is pretty great. I'm happy she makes it to the final 4. It's good to see something we can root for from this character after all the stuff she's been put through in action and world tour. I'm glad this season finally resolves the love triangle issue as well. Though the way the relationship between Gwen and Duncan is portrayed this season is weird as well. There's almost no chemistry between the two. Not on a romantic level at least. I wasn't a big fan of the way Duncan kept wanting Courtney's attention, and I think them breaking up is a half-decent solution to a relationship not a lot of people were keen on anyway. And speaking of Duncan, his arc with him trying to prove he is still a bad boy is really weird too. Duncan's soft side is explored with great care and subtle details in the first season of Total Drama, and there's an intriguing part of this story with Courtney. Here it is just like, oh, I am not bad, but I wanna be bad because I am bad. Oh, look at me go. The interactions he has with Zoe during this season are kind of endearing, but there isn't a lot more to this story. This is the first season where Duncan doesn't make it to the final 5, and I'm so glad we finally don't have to sit through an entire season of this guy. If you can't tell, I'm not the biggest fan of Duncan. You'll get why once we get to action. And finally, there's Courtney. She has a weird arc throughout this story as well. Why is Courtney placed on the Heroic Hamsters team? Has anyone working on the show seen Total Drama action? Of all people, Chris probably dislikes her most, so why would he put her on the Heroes team? Like I said, the interactions she has with Gwen in this season are pretty cute, and unlike a lot of people, I found her romance with Scott really endearing. It wasn't the quality of her and Duncan in season 1, but they made for some pretty comedic moments together.
Ladies first. Or is that wrong because this is dangerous? Or is that wrong because this is the 21st century?
Of course I have to talk about Sunday Muddy Sunday. Probably one of the first things people will point out about this season. Personally, I don't have as big a problem with this episode as so many other people have, but then again, I also wasn't rooting for Courtney to win this season. But don't worry, we'll get to that as well. What does really annoy me about Sunday Muddy Sunday is how it manages to completely butcher Courtney's character in a single episode, undoing everything we have been setting up to during this season so far. I really can't handle when shows manage to pull this off. It's something you have to actively pursue in order to mess up so royally. I couldn't handle it in the final season of Game of Thrones, and I really can't handle it here either. If you ever want me to recap all the seasons of Game of Thrones like I do with the Total Drama seasons, then let me know, but I warn you beforehand, once we get to season 8, it will just be me moaning for about half an hour. And that concludes all the characters we had already seen multiple seasons before. Wow, what a list, right? In order to keep this video from becoming too long, let me quickly gloss over some of the less important characters. Sierra is a dumber and less competent version of her former self. I see what they're trying to do, but I don't get why they don't just bring back Cody at this point. Or better yet, if you don't have anything to expand on her character, just leave her out of the season entirely. Sierra and Walter could still fend for her own, and while she was completely obsessed with Cody, she still realized when others were trying to exploit her, as well as being pretty strong in challenges. This Sierra has none of that. She's just here to rehash her old story beats in a less appealing way, and she completely overstays her welcome. Same goes for Cameron. I understand why he needs to be here, he is probably the most all-star from the Revenge of the Island cast, but that doesn't say a whole lot. It feels like they don't really know what to do with the character here, so they just make him Cody 2.0, frightened and fragile. You can't really leave him out of this season, but you don't need to save him from elimination either. Let alone twice. Joe and Lightning both serve their roles pretty well. I like how Joe gets a triumph over Lightning this time around, but then immediately gets voted off herself when they realize Lightning was still a strong player they just booted from their team. It reinforces that idea that Joe and Lightning both need each other to stay in the game, but also are each other's biggest enemy. More on that once we get to the Revenge of the Island video. Joe's dynamic with Heather is pretty good too, and I can fully imagine how this conflict would appear in a real life setting as well. Oh, also I like how Lightning's hair is white this season. It's a nice touch and a cool continuity from the previous finale where he gets struck by lightning. Okay, as of recording, that finale is now 9 years old and I only just got the joke that Lightning gets struck by lightning.
Hey y'all, Scott
is a pretty great character. With them having a literal team of villains, not every villain is able to fit the villain role this season, and so I think the transition from evil schemer to comic relief character fits Scott's character pretty well. It makes me appreciate the already great character from Revenge of the Island even more, and having him in a relationship this season is something I didn't think I needed until we got it.
Courtney, I'm your girlfriend!
The same can be said for Alejandro. Okay, maybe not the relationship part, because he already kinda got that. Anyway, the other stuff, I mean. Up until Heather's elimination, we haven't seen a single episode of the character on his own, and how he would act without Heather around. And it's nice to finally get that here. Alejandro reminds me of Heather in action. Everybody knows he's a scheming douche who will try to use every opportunity to manipulate the contestants and bend the rules of the competition to his will, and I like how they use this to make him specifically the opponent to Mal. With Duncan, I find it less believable that no one is willing to hear him out, but with Al, I think it makes a lot of sense. I like how Alejandro's elimination feels so inevitable as everyone just has a reason to dislike him. It's cool seeing his luck run out in the final 6, and it's a good place to end this storyline. I wouldn't have liked it if they dragged it on longer than it needed to. Everybody knows we've got enough plot armor in this series as it is already. The only thing I really dislike is how his final words to Zoe are just that,
The truth is in the art! It's in the art!
like, come on dude, just say that you have incriminating evidence of Mal doing crazy stuff and where you hid it. So we can just go find it there anyway, and if Mal tries to prevent it by being there quicker than the rest, it will surely seem suspicious. And just like that, the only two characters I haven't discussed are Mike and Zoe. Ooh, baby! I know you have been waiting for me to talk about them. What terrible things do I have in store for these characters? I really like Mike and Zoe. I was rooting for them to win the season, and I was overjoyed when they did. Oh no, wait, guys, please hear me out. Don't click off the video! Yeah, okay, I really like Mike. I would say he's definitely in my top 5 favorite characters of all time. And before you ask, no, that's not an out-of-season April Fool's joke. I just really enjoy the character. Mike, in my opinion, is one of the most endearing characters of the show. Seeing him eliminated 6th in Revenge of the Island was a big shocker to me on the first viewing, as I was pretty sure that he was going to win this season. Coming from someone who was already rooting for Mike in Revenge of the Island, of course he was the character I was rooting for to win All-Stars. All-Stars is notorious for introducing the evil Mal. Potentially Mike's original personality, and definitely one of those things that people will bring up when ranting about this season. The thing is, I don't see why people have this big of a problem with Mal. There is a lot of criticism that can be outed to the character and his arc, but I think Mal in general is not as bad as people make him out to be. The alter ego is supposed to be a being of pure evil. His entire character is built around him wanting to wreak havoc and cause as much trouble as possible. And yeah, I think they did a fine job at portraying him that way. Now sure, Edgelord Mal might be a bit hard to take serious sometimes. but for the most part, I think Mel fits the tone of Total Drama. He's just another one of Mike's crazy personalities, which I tend to quite like too. It gives the character a lot of depth and you root for Mike to win the inner struggle within himself. For him to also win the season and the girl at the end, some might find it a bit too much success for one character, and yeah, I guess this is a fair opinion to have. I personally like this ending a lot, but it was coming from the guy who already liked Mike at the beginning of the season, and I can see how someone who doesn't like Mike doesn't find this all that interesting and would be less pleased with this outcome. And yes, I am obliged to talk about the entire arc happening within Mike's head and the infamous reset button. And yeah, it's poorly written and a big anticlimax, but I really don't have that problem with this part either. Again, if you don't like Mike, this part of the show will probably not interest you all that much. However, some people like to dislike Mal and Mike for just being immersion breaking to the show, and that just doesn't sit right with me. Disliking this part because it breaks the illusion of a reality TV series is unfair. There are plenty of times the camera films parts that it shouldn't be able to. Like this dream segment DJ has in action, or this dream segment Owen has in Island. Not to mention the constant video clips that make him world tour. Breaking immersion like this is surely nothing new for Total Drama, so I think this shouldn't be held against Mal or Mike as a character. And speaking of Mike, Zoe sure does that a lot. Speaking of Mike, I mean, as in saying his name a lot. You know what I mean. On my first viewing of the show, I found Zoe really endearing. And on rewatching, I still do. Although, now I can see some of the flaws in the character I previously couldn't. Zoe is more or less the main character of Total Drama All-Stars. There's not really any denying there. Her trying to figure out what's wrong with Mike takes up a majority of the runtime of the show. But the problem with this storyline is that they need to stretch it out until the final episode. And this means Zoe is very naive and plain dumb throughout most of it. She gets constant warnings from the other contestants, yet is clueless why Mike is behaving so weirdly. You know he has multiple personality disorder, right? Wouldn't it be crazy to assume that this is one of his characters acting up? Or at the very least realize Mike has the tendency to do weird stuff? I mean, this clip is from episode 5. And here she already knows that Mike is trying to sabotage Cameron. How does it take her to the very end to figure out that Mal is doing all this stuff? Thinking about it more, I think the biggest problem with Zoe this season is the way they go about telling her story. Were we to follow this story through the perspective of her eyes, we would have a whodunit mystery at our hands. Somebody is sabotaging the group, so he has no idea who it is, and with the contestants dropping out one by one, the possible suspects of the whodunit grow thinner each episode, until the big reveal that it was secretly her boyfriend all along. But like any good murder mystery, murder in quotation marks, well, unless you count a Game Boy as a person, the success of the story hinges on the fact that we also don't know who it is. Imagine you are watching an episode of CSI and in the first 5 minutes the killer is revealed, but now we have to watch another 30 minutes as the investigators try to reach the same information we already have. It's pointless. And above all, it's boring. Which is probably the biggest downside to Zoe's arc. Zoe spends 6 episodes gathering clues until finally realizing Mal has taken over Mike. Well, we already know this. If they want to tell a story where Mal is bamboozling Zoe, then they shouldn't have Zoe take up the majority of her screen time trying to puzzle the simplest clues together without success. But despite all that, I still like Zoe and the story these two share in this season. I mean, come on, it's hard to not like Zoe, right? Just look at her. I can really feel the conflict inside Zoe towards the end of the season between trying to save her boyfriend and fighting the man that has taken over his body, and it gives more weight to her decision to take Mike to the finale instead of Scott. Would it have been a better decision to finish this story in the semifinals and have Courtney versus Scott in the finale instead? Yeah, maybe. But I think I would have been disappointed that Mike and Zoe didn't get to have their finale spots. Courtney and Scott were both nice characters, but they should have gotten more screen time in order to warrant that finale. And whether you like them or not, you can't argue that Mike and Zoe had a lack of screen time this season. As is, I'm satisfied, but I can understand if you aren't. To conclude, All Stars is just lackluster when compared to the other seasons. It's not like they're not trying, I mean it's above Pocket to Island for a reason, but somehow they managed to find that one thing that doesn't work for each of the characters. And it's unfortunate because All Stars as a concept is a great way to finalize what you've been building up to thus far. Same goes for the challenges, which so far I haven't talked about either. Apparently those are supposed to be homages to earlier seasons, but despite that I still only recognize a few of them. And for example, yeah, you can tell me that this is an homage to season 3, but the baby carriage in particular doesn't really say, wow, that I remember from World Tour. Wasn't it great when that happened? Oh gosh, that was fantastic. As it stands, All Stars is fine. but it's not nearly on the same level of quality as the other 5 seasons we have to see in this list. Maybe one day I'll do a deep dive on all the reasons why All Stars is overhated. But for now, that's going to wrap things up today. 2 seasons down and 5 are still in the running for being the best season. If you want to predict which season is going to take the win, you can do so in the comments. If by now you are still watching, you are either enjoying the series or you have fallen asleep without a play on. If the latter is true, sleep well, my child. But if you are still awake, consider leaving a like on this video and subscribing to the channel. As I've said a couple of times now, I'm still very new to all this and any feedback is more than welcome. But thank you so much for watching. This has been Silly Billy, and remember to never bring boxing gloves to a mutated shark fight. Houdoe!